Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching and listening to the Wake Up America show, and that's on the 4 Liberty Network. I know. Thanks for all the happy birthdays. It's so wonderful to see M&M's, Jimmy Joe Patty terrifying me for literally no reason. Siggy's mom, Barney Styles, Thorma, Kermode, CF30, my lovely wife, Stephanie, and of course, BB for Liberty. Morning, everybody. It's my birthday. Doom, doom, ch, doom, doom, ch, doom, doom. Yeah, I'm in a good mood today, but I'm sorry that the topics are so dark. We do have a fantastic show for you here, though. Yes, that's how I'm feeling today at 45 years old. Honestly, I feel great. No sound essay? Yeah, I have no idea. But you can hear me, so we'll just keep going anyway. No sound? I see it popping. It's there. Good morning. Happy birthday. We're so glad and thankful to have you guys all here with us today. You know, the nice thing about having your own show is you can do whatever you want. I could work on my birthday, not work on my birthday. But I chose to work. I do this for you because I enjoy it too. It's fun. Hope that you have fun today. Click the like button. And if today's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, we'd love to have you be a regular guest. Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central. That's the Wake Up America show schedule. So click the follow button before you leave so you can join us for our regular schedule. Feliz cumpleaños. Yes. Thank you, Drew. Wake up, America, rise and freedom. Shake off the cobwebs and grab a cup of founding flavors. We've got K-Cups now, and they are so delicious. Noxus Continental Kick, currently the top-selling K-Cups in the store. Today's show is a journey from the cold clinical death cots of Canada to the high glam, low IQ hallways of the stay-at-home girlfriend industrial complex. Yes, it's a thing. But we're going to start with a story that should make your blood boil. We're going deep into the Canadian death cult. I was convinced by John Stossel years ago of the right of the individual to choose the time and place of their own death. But when you see the state coaching a 26-year-old blind man with seasonal depression into an early grave because he's a, quote, line item liability, you realize that the right to die has become the duty to disappear. We're going to fact check some of the horror stories that they don't want you to hear. Then we're pivoting to the EPSTEIN Grifter Files. You've seen the clips. Tara Palmeri versus Michael Tracey on Piers Morgan. It's a masterclass in media manipulation. When the facts don't fit the global sex ring narrative, the grifters start asking, who pays you? We're going to look at the 3.5 million files released by Pam Bondi, and we're going to find out why Donald Trump was right to call the media's fan fiction a hoax. Sound good? It does sound good, especially when the sound is playing good. And for our culture war fix, the lovely Camellia Peterson joins me to discuss the stay-at-home girlfriend phenomenon. Is it a return to tradition, or is it just a Marxist feminist ploy to get a taxpayer-funded salary for making matcha lattes? We're going to roast the University of Michigan columnists who want to turn your living room into a unionized workplace. Finally, Jeremy Kauffman of the Free State Project stops by to help me address the elephant in the room. We love Thomas Massie, but has he lost the plot on the Epstein unmasking? When you're reading the names of innocent bystanders from a photo lineup on the House floor, you aren't fighting the deep state, you're feeding a digital lynch mob. It's going to be a heavy show today, it's going to be a fast show today, and it's going to be the most honest 2 hours in media you're going to see today. Make sure that you're a monthly supporter of the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. If you're a Peterson's Patriot, thank you very much for your patriotism. I prefer C-cups, says Thormac. Oh, well. I'm a B. Wake up, America. We are told that the progressive future is one of unlimited compassion, unlimited autonomy, and unlimited care. But if you want to see the end stage of that lie, look north to Canada. A heartbroken family in Ontario began screaming into the void after the Canadian state murdered their 26-year-old son, Kiano Vafaeian. Kiano wasn't terminally ill at all. He was blind, he was diabetic, and he struggled with seasonal depression. Now, in any sane civilization, you give that young man a coat, a light box, and a reason to live. But in Justin Trudeau's Canada, you give him a death coach. His mother, Margaret Marcilla, alleges that a doctor named Ellen Wibe literally coached this vulnerable young man on how to deteriorate his body to qualify for state-sponsored suicide. They call it MAID.
But, you know, he didn't have a supportive wife. The GP told me that she hadn't wanted him at home to take care of because she didn't want him in the house, and that she never came to the care home to see him. But when she found out he was going to have an assisted death, she was furious. And the care home, it was their first one, and they were really scared. And when I arrived on the day, his dog was snuggled up beside him in his bed, and his father was beside him. And his father said, you know, I was here at the beginning, and I'm here at the end. It was a beautiful death. But the wife made formal complaints against me because she felt that he hadn't been assessed correctly. I was cleared of all wrongdoing, but you know, we know that angry family members are our greatest risk.
Yeah, good, and they ought to be. You psycho hose beast. They call it MAID, medical assistance in dying, but let's call this what it actually is: predatory euthanasia. The family that had stopped this once before, but the system of Canada is designed to win this argument. This doctor jokes about bringing babies into the world while having killed over 500 people. That's not healthcare. That is a cultural autoimmune disease where the doctor becomes the virus. Now, let's talk about the architects of this abomination. The woman that you just heard right there, Dr. Ellen Wibe, who performed this procedure on Kiano. She describes her work as a human right, and she compares it to abortion. She says that she has these long, fascinating conversations with patients before she kills them. Fascinating? You're talking about the permanent termination of a human soul, and she describes it like she's reviewing a podcast. The numbers don't lie. 5.1% of all deaths in Canada are now state-sponsored suicides. Over 16,000 Canadians were killed by their own government in 2024 alone. That is a 32% jump in just 1 year. This is a culture of death that has gone viral. They scrapped the requirement that death be, quote, reasonably foreseeable. Now, if you're tired, if you're lonely, if you're disabled, the bureaucracy has a syringe waiting for you. And this is what happens when you turn the right to die into a government mandate for efficiency. The state always finds it cheaper to bury you than to sustain you. And I need to be honest with you because this show is about truth over tribalism. In the past, I have argued for the right to die. As a libertarian, I believed in radical self-ownership. I thought if a man wants to check out, who is the state to stop him? But I was wrong. I was naive because I forgot the golden rule of power, or I never learned it. Whatever the state touches, it perverts. I believed in a private right, but the Canadians created a public utility. When the state manages suicide, it becomes an incentive. The state is a monster of fiscal coldness. It looks at a disabled man and sees a line item veto. It looks at a depressed youth and sees a savings on Social Security. I've watched this evolve from compassion to the dying to convenience for the living, and I'm rapidly changing my mind. If the state has the power to authorize your death, you don't own your own life. You're merely a tenant in your own body, and the landlord who really owns it just gave you an eviction notice. Now, if you think this is about medical suffering, you are blind, because look at the case of Amir Farsood. Amir was a 54-year-old man in Ontario with excruciating back pain, but that's not why he applied to die. He applied for MAID because he was about to be homeless. He literally told reporters, I don't want to die, but I don't want to be homeless more. The Canadian state had one doctor sign off on his execution because he couldn't afford rent. Think about that. In the compassionate North, the cure for poverty is a lethal dose of propofol. So they have created a system where the ultimate safety net is a death shroud. Luckily, a GoFundMe saved Amir at the last second. But how many others don't get a viral news story? How many others are slipping through the cracks and into a coffin because they can't pay their bills? This is eugenics by other means, targeting the non-productive and offering them the, quote, dignity of disappearing. Look at Alan Nichols, a 61-year-old man admitted to the hospital for suicide protection. He had hearing loss and depression. His family begged the doctors to stop, but the state signed his death warrant anyway. On his application for death, the only disability listed was hearing loss. He was eating, he was walking, he was laughing with his family, and the doctors killed him anyway. Or look at Roger Foley, a man with a neurological disease who recorded hospital staff literally threatening him with a $1,500 a day hospital bill if he didn't choose to die. That is not assisted dying. That is extortion. That is coercion. When the hospital director of ethics tells you that staying alive is too expensive, he isn't giving you a choice. He's giving you an ultimatum. Now, this is the track 2 reality, where the vulnerable are pressured into the grave to clear the beds for the next taxpayer. America, wake up. New York just legalized assisted suicide this week. Governor Hochul signed the bill, and they will tell you it has safeguards. They'll tell you it's only for the terminally ill. That is the same lie that they told the Canadians in 2016. The safeguards are always the first thing to melt away. Once you accept the premise that some lives are not worth living, the bureaucracy will decide which ones those are. Who else is going to do it? We're watching the controlled demolition of Western morality. We are replacing the sanctity of life with the efficiency of the syringe. If we don't stand against this abomination, we are conceding that human beings are disposable assets. We are telling our children that if life gets hard, the state has a needle for you. It's time to restore moral clarity. It's time to reject the nihilism of the North. And it's time to fight for a civilization that cares instead of a government that kills. Now, let's connect the dots that the corporate media will refuse to touch. Why is Canada pushing death so aggressively? It's not compassion, it's calculated. This is the logical, inevitable, and bloody conclusion of socialized medicine. When the government runs healthcare, you are no longer a patient, you are a liability. In a single-payer system, every dollar spent on your dialysis, your therapy, or your wheelchair ramp is a dollar taken out of the collective pot. The Canadian Parliamentary Budget Office literally released a report in 2020 calculating that expanding MAID would save the state nearly $90 million a year in healthcare costs. They're doing the math on your mortality. They've replaced the waiting list with the wish to die list because the needle is cheaper than the nurse. This is the Liverpool care pathway on steroids. Remember the UK scandal, the NHS caught putting patients on a pathway to death without telling their families, withdrawing food and water to, quote, free up beds? Socialized medicine always ends in rationing, and the ultimate ration, life itself. And this is not just a Canadian quirk or something in the UK. Look at the Netherlands. They recently euthanized a 29-year-old woman, Zoraya Terbeek, because she had autism and depression. Her doctor told her, "There's nothing more we can do for you." That is the socialized death sentence. Look at Belgium, where euthanasia now counts for nearly 3% of all deaths, including people suffering from, quote, tiredness of life. When you socialize the cost of health, you socialize the value of life, which means that the individual becomes worthless. In these systems, the state has a monopoly on care, which gives them a monopoly on the exit door. They've created this cultural atmosphere where the responsible thing for a sick or elderly person to do is to stop being a burden on the taxpayer. So kick off. This is a civilizational suicide pact written in bureaucratic triplicate. If you think that this can't happen here, just look at the bills being signed in Albany and Sacramento. The Grim Reaper has a government ID, and he's coming for the vulnerable in the name of the greater good. Good morning, SeaWorld girl. Stuff like this just boils my blood, man. Good morning, Rise and Freedom. I'm Austin Peterson. You're watching the Wake Up America show. I'm 45 years old, and I am not suicidal. I'm really glad and thankful to have all of my friends here joining us live on the Wake Up America show. If today is your first time here, do click the follow button if you're enjoying the content. When you click the follow button, you get a notification when we go live, and you can join us 5 days a week, just like Mary Kramer and Entropy Nomad and so many others do. 1981 Luke, my best friend from college, is here. I'm so happy to see you guys. Thank you so much for all the birthday wishes. Both Luke and I turning 45 this year. We're old dudes. Yeah. Drew says, not changing my stance on this after seeing my mom fight cancer for 18 years. That said, the state should have zero input on the decision. I agree with you in theory, Drew, but I think the reality is that the practice of it will always turn into what we're seeing right now. Because if you do it and it's government approved, then only the government will retain a monopoly on that power. The government is never going to say, well, we'll just let private people decide if they're going to go through a clearance process. And guess what the clearance process is going to be? It's going to be the government. They're going to take monopoly control over it. So I agree in theory. And John Stossel definitely made me think about this issue a long time ago. But I think now that I see the practice of this medically assisted dying, I cannot in good conscience support it. I can't call myself, I think, pro-life and say that I support something like that. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree? Has this changed your mind? I change my mind sometimes. I change my mind on things, including the Epstein files.
Recanted against
Let her speak.
Jean-Luc Brunel. So you defend the credibility
Let her speak, or I'll cut your mic.
of your journalistic collaborator. Go ahead.
Do you work? Who do you work for, Michael? Because I've never met anyone in my entire life who would who's paying you? Who do you work for? I think a lot of people are wondering this because I've never seen anyone quite like you going after victims of sex crimes and attacking them like this. So you must be being paid by someone in power who does not like these accusations that have been made against them. And I think it's fair to ask, are you being paid by any of the men who've been accused by Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm having trouble hearing right now. I wish I could respond to whatever nonsense she just blurted out.
I'm asking you if you have ever been paid by any of the men who have been accused of crime.
Maybe somebody can
astonishing coincidence that you suddenly lost your hearing when you were asked a very difficult question, and rather telling, I may say.
And this is it. And that was the deceptively edited clip. But the actual clip after that point, this is how he responded to it.
The implication. No. I resent the question. I asked her straightforward questions about her own journalistic.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to Tara now.
Single aspect of it.
You don't just get to talk ad infinitum.
Whole little defamation song and dance because she can't actually engage in an intelligent way because there's no defense.
Tara, let me.
No, there is.
Nor for David.
Tara, let me ask.
I can talk about my reporting on the broken Jeffrey Epstein
Tara, let me ask you. Tara, you don't need to justify your reporting. It's been excellent on the whole scandal.
Why not?
Tara, let me just ask you.
What was your?
Yeah, why? You don't have to justify. Wake up, America. If you want to see how the media grift actually works, take it from somebody who's been on the inside and knows how these operations run. If you hadn't watched that train wreck that just happened right there on Piers Morgan's show, Michael Tracey, a guy who actually reads the primary documents in the Epstein case, was in the middle of dismantling the Epstein narrative when that woman, Tara Palmeri, decided to drop a smoke bomb. Instead of defending her reporting, instead of addressing the fact that her sources have recanted allegations against people like Alan Dershowitz, she pivots to the oldest trick in the book. Who is paying you? She suggested that Tracey is a paid operative for men in power. And this is the grifter's last refuge. When you can't win on the merits, you impugn the motives. And Piers Morgan, who should know better, jumped right in, calling it an astonishing coincidence that Tracey had audio issues. Let me tell you, as someone who produces a lot of shows, we do get audio issues. I think we had some earlier. Audio is shockingly complex. So ignoring the fact that this entire segment was a circus designed to protect Palmeri from having to explain her own fiction, this is how the truth dies. Not with a whimper, but with a snarky tweet and a predictable smear. So let's get into the meat of what this journalist, Tracey, was actually saying before he was interrupted by the drama. So he called the current state of the Epstein coverage brainless hysteria. And frankly, I happen to fully agree with him. He is 100% correct. For years, we've been told there's a massive, secret, global sex ring involving every person that the left dislikes. But when you look at the actual data, the crux of the mythology built by Virginia Giuffre has been crumbling. We're talking about victims who were, in many cases, adult prostitutes operating in jurisdictions where they were above the age of consent. Tracey pointed out that Giuffre had nothing to do with the initial Palm Beach investigation. But to the media grifters, truth is an obstacle. They've fomented a moral panic that has led to mass defamation, and they use the word victim as if it's a magical shield. If you question the narrative, you're attacking victims. No, you're attacking liars who are degrading the actual justice system for clout and Substack subscriptions. And here's the punchline. Here's the punchline of this that will make the media's head explode. All right, Donald Trump was right. He called this a hoax. And the recent release of these 3.5 million Epstein-related files by Attorney General Pam Bondi proves it. The media spent years hinting that Trump was deep in the Epstein fold, but the FBI's documents show the exact opposite.
So why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage your press to go look at these allegations, and I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong.
Disgusting. Trump was telling the cops to focus on the evil Ghislaine Maxwell. The files absolved Trump of these wild conspiracies that the Palmeris of the world have been hawking for a decade. The DOJ has now released the files, and the bombshell that the media promised turned out to be a dud. But will the grifters apologize? Do they admit they stoked a national panic for ratings? Of course not. They just edit their videos, squint at the camera, and ask, "Who pays you?" to anyone who's brave enough to point at the naked emperor. So this is how grifters maintain their power. They say, who's paying you to do this? Well, let me tell you how the media works. The money in the media is not in spreading the truth. The money is in spreading the bullshit, the lies. That's where the money is. The money isn't in calling out people or doing the kind of journalism that Nick Shirley did in Minnesota, calling out the fraud. His life, if he doesn't get himself a good bodyguard and set himself up with a nice pile of cash to protect himself, Nick Shirley's a man who needs to watch his back, because if you're like him or you're like Kyle Rittenhouse, all right, these people will, if they can't destroy your reputation, they'll just murder you in the streets. So while the truth will be treated like a terrorist threat, Tara Palmeri represents a class of journalists who believe they should never have to defend their work if the topic is sensitive enough. If you're attacking her, you're attacking victims. Then they deceptively edit their clips, like the one we saw earlier, to make themselves look like heroes and their critics look like villain. It's easy. Guys, there's a playbook. We have a playbook in the media. I say we, I'm in the media. There's a playbook. You want to make yourself look good? There's a whole list of things that you can do to rehabilitate your image, to make yourself look good, to paint yourself as the hero, make your opponent the villain. It's not hard to do. As a matter of fact, you have to become an expert at it if you want to build a cult following. It's just how it works. I've been in many cults. You have more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader. A number of cults. Hold on one second, guys. If I had a producer, I'd have them pull that out for me. Here we go.
Things spicy. I'm a Lutheran and Bob is a Unitarian and keeps things spicy. That's why we're cursed.
I've been involved in a number of cults, both as a leader and a follower. You have more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader.
Good morning. Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you, everybody, for all the birthday rants. Appreciate you very much. Now, Tara Palmeri represents a class of journalists who believe they should never have to defend their work. Right? They deceptively edit their clips to make them look like heroes and their critics look like villains. The real disgrace, though, in this is the collapse of standards. When Piers Morgan says a reporter shouldn't have to defend their output, he is surrendering the entire journalistic profession to the mob. Now, the Epstein files should be a lesson in the dangers of moral panic. But instead, they've become a perpetual motion machine for grifters who prefer hysteria to history. Wake up, America. The people claiming to be the light are the ones spreading the most shadow. But it's not just the media grifters like Palmeri. It's the Capitol Hill cloud chasers, too. Enter Khanna and Thomas Massie. These two have formed a bipartisan transparency alliance that is currently doing more damage to the truth than Epstein ever did. Last week, Khanna stood on the House floor and read out 6 names, claiming that the DOJ was shielding wealthy, powerful men. He and Massie told the press, if we found 6 in 2 hours, imagine how many they are hiding. Well, we don't have to imagine because we have the facts. The DOJ came back and revealed that 4 of those 6 men were completely random people from an FBI photo lineup. They had nothing to do with Epstein, nothing to do with Maxwell. They were literally innocent bystanders. And Khanna used his congressional privilege to smear them as sex traffickers for a Twitter clip. That's not an oversight. That is a Stalinist show trial with a smartphone. And Thomas Massie, who I've admired for years, should know better. But he's so addicted to the anti-establishment high, he's willing to run over innocent citizens to feed the beast. And let's look at the names that were actually connected, okay? Let's talk about those too. Les Wexner and Sultan bin Sulayem. Now, Khanna and Massie, they point to an FBI document from 2019 calling Wexner a, quote, co-conspirator. And they act like this is a new bombshell. But newsflash, we knew Wexner hired Epstein to manage his billions decades ago. Being referenced 200 times in a file, that's not the same thing as an indictment. Sultan bin Sulayem, Sim Salabim, he resigned as CEO of DP World over an email from 20 years ago. But where are the charges? Where is the evidence of the crime? So the recent release of 3.5 million pages has shown us a lot of filthy lifestyles, a lot of wealthy creeps, and a lot of elite posturing. But it has not shown the global pedophile ring that Massie and Khanna are promising. So they're whipping up a moral panic because you know what the truth is? The truth is complicated, and complicated doesn't get retweets. So they're telling the public that the DOJ is spying on them in the reading room while they're the ones exposing the names of innocent Americans to a digital lynch mob. It's shameful, it's dangerous, and it is the peak of the Epstein grift. Wake up, America. My good friend Kenny Webster dropped a bomb on X yesterday that has the entire internet screaming. He said, and I quote, Trump was probably right. The general public isn't emotionally mature enough to handle the horrors of the Epstein files. He called out the, quote, stupid people running wild with cherry-picked facts. Now, normally, as a libertarian, my instinct is to recoil, right? I want the truth. I can handle the truth. I want the files. I want the heads on pikes. But friends, I am looking at the chaos. I'm looking at this moral panic. I'm looking at the destructions of reputations based on photo lineups. And I have to ask the forbidden question. Is my friend Kenny Webster right? Are we witnessing the danger of unfiltered truth hitting a population that has entirely lost its moral compass? If you give a child a loaded gun, is it the gun's fault when the house gets trashed? So we are seeing the Epstein mythology become a religion of hate. And it might be proving that Trump's skepticism of total disclosure wasn't a cover-up, it was a quarantine. Let's talk about that. Because here's the ugly truth that brings us to a philosophical crossroads that I have avoided for years. So I have spent a decade, 2 decades, criticizing Leo Strauss and Plato's concept of the noble lie. So Plato argued in the Republic that a stable society requires a myth of the metals. He said the rulers need to tell the people a story, a lie, that God put gold in the souls of the leaders, silver in the guards, and bronze in the workers. And the point wasn't to be mean or to denigrate them. It was to ensure an orderly society. Leo Strauss, the famous University of Chicago professor, took this further. He believed in esoteric truth for the elite and exoteric truth for the masses. He thought that if the unwashed, enlightened knew the raw, ugly, nihilistic reality of power, they wouldn't be able to handle it. They would descend into the kind of brainless hysteria that we are seeing right now on social media. And I used to call this elitist garbage. I used to say, tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. But look at the chips. Look where they're falling. They're falling on innocent people. Now, let me give you an anecdote that might help this go down a little bit easier. Remember, it is the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without necessarily accepting it. Aristotle. That's the 105 people who are watching the show this morning. We're going deep. We're going ancient here. So I'm thrilled that you're all here, and thank you all for joining me live. And please click the like button if you enjoy this. I'm going to challenge you. You're not supposed to challenge your audience. You're supposed to just give them red meat. And I'm challenging you now, and I'm hoping that you take something away from this. You don't have to accept. You don't have to believe everything that I'm saying, but I want you to entertain this thought. And let me give you a little anecdote on this that might go down a little bit easier. Okay, so imagine a father whose house is on fire. His young children are trapped in an upstairs bedroom. They're totally absorbed in their toys. If the father screams, "You're about to be incinerated by a chemical fire caused by faulty wiring," the children won't understand. They will panic. Right? They'll freeze, and then they'll die. But if the father tells a noble lie, if he says, "Hurry, there's a giant ice cream truck waiting outside with golden chariots," they jump, the children run, they survive. The lie is the only thing that saves them from the horror that they aren't mature enough to understand. And I'm starting to wonder if the Epstein files are that fire. If we tell the American people that the entirety of their ruling class, their media, and their culture is a predatory sewer, do they build a better world? Or do they burn the rest of the house down out of pure, unadulterated spite? There's an old proverb that says, sunlight is the best disinfectant. I've used it myself for years. But a scientist will tell you, if you concentrate sunlight through a magnifying glass, it turns into a laser that sets the anthill on fire. We're turning the Epstein truth into a laser. We have people like Tara Palmeri and Khanna using cherry-picked data to set fire to anyone that they dislike. They aren't looking for justice. They're looking for targets. And Kenny Webster is right. The public isn't emotionally mature enough to distinguish between a co-conspirator and a bystander. We've replaced the noble lie with the ignorant riot. And I hate to say it, but maybe the Straussians were right. to be afraid of us. Maybe the elites redacted those names not to protect the criminals, but to protect civilization from the mob. Wake up, America. The truth might set you free, but if you don't know how to handle it, it will just burn you alive. Thank you so much, everyone, for unlocking that bonus content phase 1. I'm really excited. Thank you so much, guys. You're so generous. I'm deeply, deeply grateful. You make an old man feel good on his birthday. I've got bonus content for you. I need to take a quick little break. When we come back, I don't know. It's a mystery because it's a mystery. But Camellia Peterson will be here at 8. Jeremy Kauffman will be here at 8:30. It's 7:38 live right now in Jefferson City, Missouri. So we've got 2 amazing guests in the second hour. You don't want to miss it. Camellia talks about stay-at-home girlfriends. Jeremy's going to talk about Thomas Massie and the Epstein files. It's the Wake Up America show on the 4 Liberty Network. New York City's own past policies are to blame for much of the gig economy drama, which Mayor Mamdani will further exacerbate. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani is barely a month into the job, and he's already aggressively seeking to follow through on his campaign pledge to crack down on the gig economy. In recent weeks, his administration has launched several high-profile initiatives against gig companies, seeking to portray them as greedy corporations out to fleece earnest workers. But behind the flashy press releases and dramatic saber rattling, the reality is that New York City's own past policies are to blame for much of the gig economy drama in the Big Apple. And worse yet, it's everyday New Yorkers who will likely suffer most from this regulatory onslaught. From day one on the job, the Mamdani administration has made its anti-gig bent clear. On Inauguration Day, Mamdani's pick to head the city's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, DCWP, Samuel Levine, was already signaling to the press the coming gig economy crackdown. Even prior to Mamdani's official inauguration, Levine's appointment to head DCWP was accompanied by language accusing gig companies of misclassifying workers as independent contractors instead of full-scale employees. Before serving in the Mamdani administration, Levine worked at the Federal Trade Commission during the Biden administration, where he was known as a key acolyte to Lena Khan during her notorious anti-business reign at the agency. Now, Levine is running point for Mamdani's anti-gig agenda across New York City. 2 weeks into Mamdani's tenure, the mayor, joined by Levine and Deputy Mayor for Economic Justice Julie Su, another former Biden official who served as the acting Secretary of Labor during the 46th president's term, issued a statement declaring a new era of accountability for gig companies. The declaration coincided with a DCWP report alleging that gig companies like Uber and DoorDash had engineered design tricks in their in-app platforms to reduce worker tips by $550 million. These design tricks included moving in-app tipping prompts for food delivery, presenting the option for tipping after an order was complete rather than before. This in-app tip reshuffling came in reaction to NYC's prior 2023 decision to impose a minimum wage for food delivery drivers in the city, which sent food delivery costs soaring. The companies appear to have changed the timing of the tip option as a way to reduce the sticker shock for consumers when placing orders. The New York City Council responded last year by passing a law mandating that gig companies place their tipping prompts before an order was placed, rather than after. Last month, after news arrived that several lawsuits by gig companies seeking to enjoin these and other gig-related rules were rejected by federal judges, Levine's DCWP issued a statement reiterating its plan to vigorously enforce the city's minimum wage and tipping rules for gig workers. The city also launched its own lawsuit against the gig company MotoClick, which it argues blatantly ignored the minimum wage law and stole directly from workers' paychecks. While it's impossible to evaluate the claims against MotoClick at this early juncture in the legal proceedings, Mamdani's team also recently announced a $5 million settlement with gig platforms Uber Eats, Fantuan, and Hungry Panda for violating the minimum wage law. The Uber Eats settlement received the most attention since it involved the highest amount of settlement money. But while the top-line numbers received all the press, little attention has been paid to the fine print. Even the city noted that Uber Eats was mostly compliant with the minimum wage law and incurred the wage debt only in weeks where workers had a delivery canceled, and therefore the workers involved failed to receive the appropriate compensation from Uber. Uber clarified that DCWP had originally flagged this pay shortfall to the company in August 2024, 1.5 years before Mamdani took office, and Uber immediately agreed at the time to take corrective action to fix the issue and pledged to pay more than the amount owed in response. This nuance didn't stop Levine from triumphantly declaring, "The era of giant corporations juicing profits by underpaying workers is over." Also being lost in all the media fanfare over Mamdani's gig war is the likely cost to everyday New Yorkers. Evidence has repeatedly shown that anti-gig regulations always end up resulting in higher costs for consumers. Just recently, Instacart instituted a $5.989 regulatory response fee due to a recent extension of NYC's minimum wage law to grocery deliverers. It's also unclear how much the regulatory onslaught even helps gig workers. Tips plummeted by nearly 50% in the wake of the minimum wage law's passage in NYC, and delivery drivers in Seattle, which implemented its own minimum wage for gig-based delivery, failed to see any sustained higher take-home pay from the city's minimum wage law. These anti-gig policies have also resulted in more gig companies resorting to arranged scheduling models, in which the number of delivery drivers that can be active on the platform at any one time is restricted in order to control labor costs. This locks would-be drivers out of the market altogether and takes away a potential money-earning opportunity that these workers are depending on. Mamdani's war on gig is getting a lot of press, but beyond the flashy headlines, it's clear that both workers and consumers are likely to suffer. In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian, and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
You know, we don't want, kangaroo courts and trumped up charges. That's what happens in other places that we used to scold for doing that. We want like our court system and our Justice Department and our prosecutors to be, and our FBI to be just playing things straight and looking at the facts and not meddling in politics the way we've seen lately. You know, we don't want, kangaroo courts and trumped up charges.
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Good morning. Rise and freedom. This is my birthday song. It isn't very long. Hey. It's the best birthday song there is. Wake up, America. One of the toughest guys in Hollywood, something that I deeply admire, just dropped a truth bomb that has the everybody gets a trophy crowd shaking in their designer sneakers. Michael J. White, a 7-style black belt, 7-style black belt, legendary actor, martial artist, sat down with Joe Rogan and said something that I think we all know, but we're too afraid to say. The United States is not making men anymore. White observed that when Hollywood needs an American alpha male on screen, they aren't casting Americans. They're casting Australians, New Zealanders, and Brits. Why? Because those countries still have rites of passage. They still allow boys to compete, to fail, and to grow. Here in the States, Rogan and White agreed masculinity has been demonized for decades. White saw it years ago when he was a school teacher, the shift towards protecting self-esteem over building actual competence. He warned that when you take away competition, kids don't know how to deal with losing, and that frustration turns into something much darker than just a bruised ego. Now, I have to weigh in on this from personal experience as a martial arts instructor. I see this playing out on the mats every week. Parents bring their sons because they want them to be tough, they want them to be leaders, they want to be men. But the second a kid breaks a sweat, gets tapped out, maybe a little blood, a lot of protective instinct kind of kicks in, right? And you see parents who want their sons to succeed, but they're terrified of them being in danger. They want the black belt, but they want to skip the struggle. They want the alpha confidence without the beta failures. But listen to me. You cannot forge steel without the fire. I see these young men, they're hungry for challenge, hungry for a rite of passage, but they're being smothered by a culture that values safety over strength. So if you don't let them face the risk of losing, then you're not setting them up for real life. Michael Jai White brought up a really good point about the difference between being gifted and grit. He admitted his natural athleticism actually hampered his growth early on because fighting was, quote, easy. He said the better martial artist isn't the guy who kicks 1,000 times because he can. It's the guy who gets tired after 100 kicks and pushes himself to 120. So that is where the man is made, in the 20 kicks after he wanted to quit. Like, White applied track and field efficiency to his fighting, but he learned that the real cheat code to life is pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. Okay, so we've created a society that removes the comfort zone entirely. We just give everyone a couch and a compliment. But if you want to protect your boys from every possible hardship, you aren't really protecting them at all. You're actually crippling them for life. The bottom line is this: masculinity isn't toxic. It's essential. Rogan and White are absolutely right that the demonization of the alpha has left a vacuum that's being filled by anxiety and apathy and SSRIs. We need to stop treating competition like a microaggression and start treating it like the medicine it is. So as a martial arts instructor, I tell parents this: your job is to prepare the child for the path, not the path for the child. If we want men who can lead families, protect communities, and build civilizations, we have to let them fail. We have to let them get hit. We have to let them learn that a trophy earned is the only one that matters. Wake up, America. If we stop making men, we stop having a future. It's time to stop being overprotective and start being productive. Rise and freedom. Just last night, I was explaining to the boys in class. I was like, nothing good comes easy. They were, upset. One child even cried last night, got a little bit bloody in his lip, right? Was struggling with it, but he came back. He fought. He showed that he was strong enough to stick with it. He didn't run away, didn't run to his mommy. He stayed out there on the mats. I was so proud of him. He's just these boys, they want it. They want the struggle. Right, but society convinces them that they should run away from the struggle. There was one boy at one point last night. He looked like he was going to give up, and man, his mom said, "Do you want to come over here?" And I was just like, "No, don't do it." And he didn't do it. He didn't get off the mat. I was like, "But don't even give him that option, Mom. Come on, let him struggle. Let them struggle." I know it's painful to watch. I know it's difficult, but you have to, because the struggle is what makes the man. And that is what I was telling my students last night, that if you see two roads and one is that looks like the easy path, that's the sitting on the couch, that's the eating the chips. You see the hard road and it's got thorns on it and it's scratchy and it looks like a difficult path. Take that difficult path, because that struggle, you come out the other side, that is what will define you. When others take the easy road, I was explaining to them about investing in themselves, in their lives. I was explaining to them about how while other young men their age were at home watching television, drinking soda, eating chips, getting fat, being happy, while they were struggling, while they were crying, while they were bleeding, they were taking that difficult road. And you know what? Those boys, they looked up at me, they were so proud of themselves, because they knew that what they were doing, even though it was challenging, that they were investing in themselves. And I'm just deeply, deeply proud of these young men, these young students. This has just been, for me, one of the most personally fulfilling activities that I've engaged in, taking up the martial arts instructor in Jefferson City, Missouri. You guys have donated generously. Somebody, I think, donated $50 in Tether. That's huge. So I think we've done the great grift off Liberty Loot Live, which means at the end of the show today that we are going to play a game show and somebody's going to win a neat little prize from the Grift Shop. We're going to take a quick little break. If you're sick of the office, don't worry, guys. The internet has a solution. So when we come back, we're talking about the rise of the stay-at-home girlfriend. Stay-at-home girl, not stay-at-home wife, stay-at-home girlfriend, and the new demands that these unmarried trad wives should get a taxpayer-funded salary. I'm not kidding. My good friend Camellia Peterson joins me next to break down the latest trend in bourgeois nihilism. Don't go anywhere. city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal. Imagine bringing George Washington back to life. Just to explain that in 2025, men can get pregnant, waving an American flag might offend someone, and our government is $34 trillion in debt. But that's not all, George. We have drag queen story hour for toddlers. Pronouns are mandatory. And Harvard can't define woman. Oh. And we send billions to Ukraine but can't fix potholes in Ohio. You know, just normal modern empire stuff. I'm sure he'd be totally cool with it. Right after he finishes reloading. He didn't cross the Delaware for this nonsense, but you can carry on the fight with gear that would have made King George cry. Shop bold, shop free, shop4libertyshop.com. Legend has it, back in 1773, a band of angry, overtaxed patriots stormed a British ship, found the king's favorite tea, and said, "This would taste better without the tyranny." Then they tossed it overboard. Fast forward to today. That revolutionary spirit lives on in Boston Harbor Black, the boldest brew in the 4 Libert tea lineup. It's dark, it's smooth, it's unapologetically American, just like the folks who drink it. Whether you're sweetening it up on the front porch or drinking it straight like a Minuteman before battle, this isn't tea for royalty, it's tea for rebels. No fake flavors, no corporate slogans, just a cold glass of Don't Tread on Me in liquid form. So skip the woke iced tea aisle and stock up on Boston Harbor Black at 4libertyshop.com. Because when the heat's rising, the least you can do is drink like a patriot. Good stuff. Good morning, rise in freedom. Happy birthday to me. Thank you so much, guys, for all of your generosity this morning. After our second guest today, Jeremy Kauffman, comes on at 8:30 a.m. We're going to talk about the Epstein bullshitters. Then we'll play the Great Grift Off Liberty Loot Live. So stick around to the end of the show because we are going to all play a game show together, compete against each other for prizes. We're going to play Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? And you can win some real prizes from the shop. So, all right, wake up, America. Apparently having a job is so mid-2000s. That's the latest trend for Gen Z. It's becoming a stay-at-home girlfriend. We're talking about 23-year-olds filming their Pilates and matcha routines while their boyfriends foot the bill. But it gets even better. Columnists over at the University of Michigan are now arguing that these girlfriends deserve a mandatory and, of course, taxpayer-funded salary. They want to import Venezuela's labor laws where the state pays you a pension for doing the dishes. It's the ultimate collision of trad aesthetics and Marxist economics. On one hand, you have content creators like Diana Sidva warning that this is a financial scam that leaves women trapped at 40 with no resume and no retirement. On the other hand, you have activists claiming that care work is a human right that requires a government check. Is it the death of the marriage contract or just the latest way to virtual signal your way out of a 9-to-5? Joining me now to make sense of this cultural car wreck is commentator, good friend of the show, the only person I trust to tell me if I'm being too much of an Al Bundy, Camellia Peterson.
Good morning.
Hi, Camellia.
And happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Oh, man, I just feel so cute today. Camellia, I'm just glad to have you here today to talk about this very important, very serious subject about American culture that has hundreds of people tuning in to this show, which is the new stay-at-home girlfriend trend, okay? So Camellia, help me out here. I remember when trad meant marriage, kids, and a lifelong commitment. Right now it seems to mean I film myself making sourdough in a floral dress while my boyfriend pays for my lip filler. So is this just a new brand of narcissism? Your thoughts?
I mean, you know, we've talked many times before about in feminism, women really want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yes.
And, you know, they want to be strong and independent women, but also they would like to be taken care of. And where is my sugar daddy, please and thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
So yeah, we seem to be like sort of coming full circle, and you know the author who was writing about this is kind of bemoaning that you know these women get into this and you know they show these pictures of you know going out and shopping on their boyfriend's you know dime and you know driving the fancy cars and their routine and everything, but you know what do they do when that's over because they don't have a job and they don't have the skills to go out and support themselves. So it's almost like it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. So this Michigan columnist, I sent you this article yesterday, Audra Wohl, she's literally citing Venezuela's labor laws as a model for the U.S. to pay housework wages. Is that is this the ultimate step? Just completely replace the husband now with the government and be a stay-at-home girlfriend, but the government is your boyfriend?
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, you know, what the motivation for men is in this. I mean, like, what does a man do? Like, I can understand, you know, the male impulse to, you know, be the provider, you know, take care of the home and, you know, provide for your wife, your girlfriend, whoever it is staying home and taking care of the home. But if the government steps in and is doing that part of it, like, what's the man doing? I mean, like, this is like it all, like, you're in a threesome now, basically, with the government. Like, you're a polycule.
Worst threesome of all time. That's the only threesome that I can imagine would be bad. We're seeing a lot of these ex-stay-at-home girlfriends like Diana Silva coming out with these stark warnings, okay? They were treated poorly as stay-at-home girlfriends because they had no income. A stay-at-home girlfriend, is it a job or is this just a long-term house guest with no legal standing, Camellia?
I mean, yeah, I think it's the latter. It's a really weird situation to me because the women who go into this, first of all, probably have not been taught well by their parents and, you know, don't have good judgment to begin with. Because if you're a woman and you're going to go into a relationship where it's just long term and you're not getting any kind of commitment out of it, well, you probably have started off the wrong way to begin with. But it's also, it's an agreement. Any kind of relationship you go into, if the understanding is that you go into this and you're being supported and your job is to take care of the home and whatever, like, there is risk that comes with that. Like, eyes wide open.
Yeah, for sure. Why is marriage being treated like a mockery? You know, a wife has legal protections. A girlfriend has a suitcase, right? Are young women, is there a pressure that they feel to take on the risk of a housewife without the contract of a spouse? This whole stay-at-home girlfriend trend, is this something that you see as like vapor, as smoke? Or considering how norms and mores have changed, this is the new normal for young people.
So I think there's a number of elements to this, but first of all, I think that it's not just a lack of commitment on the part of men. I mean, I think this is women nowadays too, is that nobody wants to, like, everything is a short-term relationship, it seems like, anymore. And it requires a level of, you know, responsibility and, you know, being responsible for your own actions and behaviors in order to commit to someone else. And so there's kind of that, there seems to be a lack of that, I think, on both sides. However, I also think this is not necessarily a trend. I think that, you know, this is blown up and elevated on Instagram, social media, because, you know, real life is rarely what you see on Instagram. So you have all of these videos and they're showing this lavish lifestyle and there's no downside to that, right? But the number of people that are actually living that way and posting those videos is probably so minute that the average woman, especially in the Midwest, completely cannot relate to this. Like, this is not happening. And if it is, it's super, super rare. I don't know, maybe on the coast it happens more often, but I think this is not, I mean, I think there's women want this, but I don't think it's relatable to real life.
Yeah, we're talking to Camellia Peterson this morning about stay-at-home girlfriends and stay-at-home wives. Now, when I see topics like these, Camellia, I'm like, this is perfect. I'm going to make Camellia blush. We're going to laugh. It's going to be funny. This is the kind of topic that someone would say, oh, well, it's a tabloid story or something. But there's a serious aspect to it, which is why I think it's worth covering. Because go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when you talk in there are some serious things it talks about in there when it talks about care as, compensable work and what is included in that. And is it just care for other people, or does that care, go to include care for your home, and you deserve to be compensated for caring for your home, cleaning up after yourself. And it's like, they're acting like this is a female thing, but I have been reliably informed by all the commercials that I see now that the men are the ones doing the Swiffer mopping and, all of these kinds of things. And the woman is the one saying when the man can't fix the house, when they have a plumbing leak or whatever it is, the woman says, I know what to do. Let's get a loan.
Great. So another serious aspect of this conversation, the argument that domestic labor is labor. Okay, fine. Ladies, domestic labor is labor. If I mow the lawn, should I get a check from the Treasury? Why is household labor only a political issue when it's used to justify universal basic income for girls?
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Should I get? I'm going to mow my lawn. Am I going to get a check from the government for my domestic labor?
Right. What happens if you live alone? Like, do you get compensated for cleaning up after yourself and taking care of your home and your yard? I mean, it seems like a crazy idea. And I think that they're trying to get at it in the sense of, the person who is staying at home that maybe doesn't have an outside job, like they're not in any way getting compensated for their labor, but that's also not true. They're getting a roof over their heads and they're getting their meals. And if you're going to believe the Instagram videos, they're also getting, all of their desires met with shopping. So, that's probably not reality, but that's also the image that they're portraying.
Yeah. Now, we've talked about relationship stuff all the time on this one, right? Do you think, though, that a soft life actually leads to better relationships, or does it create a power imbalance?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there's a power imbalance, but it also goes at relationships all wrong. Because whenever, you talk, you will often hear, okay, relationships are 50-50. Well, it's not. And it's not always like it should be 100-100, right? Everybody's giving their all. And some days, one person is giving more than the other. But if everybody's putting their all into a relationship, whether that's equal all the time, like that's what makes a good quality relationship and a long lasting one. But this idea that I think it's also been damaging, this idea that there has to be fairness in a relationship. Now, I think that, it speaks to character, and you do have people who, both men and women, who are selfish and they want to put the burden of the relationship and the duties that go into maintaining a home and all those other kind of things. They want to put that on the other person. That happens. That's just people. But the idea is like you both go in giving all of it.
There's an irony to this story too, Camellia. These influencers, the content creators around this, making their own money by posing as trad wives. Isn't the irony there that they're girl bossing, the anti-girl boss movement?
I mean, yes.
It's a LARP.
They are making their money in the way that they're telling everybody else not to make their money.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking about that as I was reading through that last night, and I'm trying to think, it seems like lately I haven't seen as much of the whole, trad wife, kitchen recipe sourdough making stuff lately.
You know why? Because the controversy, the Elijah Schaefer, Sarah Stock, trad hoe trend. A lot of the trad chicks have backed off in recent weeks because they probably told Milo Yiannopoulos too much about their actual lives.
Yes.
So now they're all terrified that Milo's going to drop, some bombs on them, right? So, do these girls actually want tradition?
I mean, I think there's a part of them that does. I think there's a part of every woman that wants to be
the part where they get to stay
for.
at home and not do anything.
Well, I mean,
but not that,
yes.
because
I mean,
women. Because the thing is, was the return to tradition would mean you guys would be
Sure.
like weaving baskets.
Wow,
You know,
okay.
yeah, weaving baskets, collecting eggs, taking care of animals, getting up early, milking cows. There isn't a whole lot of desire for like the muck booting of the traditional wife in a way.
Well, unless you're in muck boots and wearing a pretty dress and filming it for Instagram, but you know,
right?
No, I do think that again, this is a character issue, and this is a how you've been raised issue. If you expect that you want to be taken care of and stay home and just be one of the wives of whatever on the TV shows, but that speaks to your work ethic too. If you are content to just like sit and do nothing and let yourself be taken care of, like I don't know, you're not a great person. Like everybody should be doing something productive with their lives, no matter what that looks like. They should be contributing to society in some way. And if you're taking care of a household and you're able to hire a lot of people to do that work for you, okay. So you manage that and you contribute to society in other ways. But yeah, just to the idea that you sit at home, sipping tea and eating bonbons or whatever like that.
That's what they're doing. Let's not, come on, be real. But how
watching soap operas.
So, they're unfortunately they're serious about this, and what we talk about on the Wake Up America show is what the country deals with about 3 to 5 years from now. I remember my friend Vince. I get to pat myself on my back because it's my birthday. But Vince, one of my best friends, was like, remember when Austin was talking about all this transgender stuff like 10 years ago before it all blew up and stuff? That's the value of clicking the like and the follow button on this show, because what you hear today, these conversations, you're laughing at, you're rolling your eye, but we're going to be seeing this, and we're going to be seeing this. Thank you, Camellia, for putting up with that hostile joke at your expense. If we start paying wages for housework, Camellia, who decides the performance review? Does the husband get to decide whether or not you do task checklist to make sure you did all your duties for the day, or is there a government inspector to make sure you deserve?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This seems to be fraught with pitfalls. Can you imagine, like we grow government to have home inspectors to determine if you have been meeting your duties for your homemaking wages?
Hey, Camellia, in the real world here, one last topic before we let you go. I saw yesterday that the House passed a repeal of the vehicle inspection tax here in Missouri. Did you see the news?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I did. So maybe we'll get it all the way through this time. Yes, we should not have to get our cars inspected every year because, we are, self-preservation is a strong instinct. And so I don't want to break down on the side of the road. So I'm motivated to take care of my car, and I don't need the government to tell me that I have been, every year.
There you go. I love it. Okay. So, Camellia, you work for AFP. You're fighting for liberty here in the state of Missouri. The vehicle inspection tax is one part of a larger puzzle. But is there anything else that you're working on, or anything that our audience needs to know about what's happening here in Missouri, or your thoughts on anything, or plugs before we let you go?
I mean, there's a wide range of things that are happening, and I spoke with a group of grassroots leaders last night and say there are a lot of things that go through the legislature that are like little or seemingly little, or they're weird or wonky or whatever, and everybody's like, I don't know what that is. But all of those little things are meant to make government better and keep them out of your lives. And so when it comes to things like getting rid of the vehicle inspections, yeah, that seems like a little thing, but it's also a regular daily hassle for Missourians. And so there's other things too that are bigger, like there's some hearings going on to make it so that veterans, people who are suffering from PTSD, can use things like Ibogaine and other, alternative treatments. And like we're getting ready to have an event too. There's a kind of a Right to Try 2.0 bill that's going through that allows, patients who have no other options to use experimental treatments, even if they haven't been approved by the FDA, rather than having to go to other countries to do that. So there are a lot of those kind of things that are going to have real impacts on people's lives that I think, are important too. We don't hear as much about. That's Camellia Petersen, fighting for liberty in the Show Me State.
We've been friends for years. She comes on the show every Tuesday and Thursday, and she would never miss my birthday. Thank you, Camellia. We appreciate you so much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
If he can hear you, can you ask him that question? Because he can't hear me, but maybe he can hear you asking that question.
I'm just saying.
If he can hear you, can you ask him that question? Because he can't hear me, but maybe he can hear you asking that question.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair
Michael,
question
can you
to
hear
ask.
me?
Did you
Can
just,
you hear
I
me,
can
Michael?
hear you very faintly. Did you just allege that I'm somehow implicated in the Epstein criminality, or did I mishear you?
I asked
No,
if you were being
Tara
paid
asked
by
if you're
anyone.
being Tara asked if you're being paid by anybody to smear the victims of the Epstein
rather than
scandal.
defend the merits of her journalistic output, which she can't because it's indefensible, what does she do? She tries to impugn me personally, tries to imply or
You're not
allege
answering
What's the answer to the question?
motive. Of course I'm not being
What's the
paid by
answer?
anyone. I am paid by my
It's a yes or
readers
no
on
question.
Substack, you idiot. You just can't engage on the merits, Tara. You are a disgrace.
I mean,
you
I'm
are
happy
going
to go
be
through all of my
remembered as
reporting,
somebody
which
who
was
is integral
fact-checked.
in fomenting this moral panic and mass hysteria that's led to mass defamation like you just tried against me. You know how Khanna and Thomas Massie got caught a few days ago accusing a random auto mechanic in New York and a random IT manager of having been complicit in pedophilic sex crimes? You're just following on in that tradition, which is so emblematic of how this issue has functioned in the popular mind.
I'm going to give
now
Tara.
it's being weaponized politically.
Tara, let me just.
Of course, Piers.
Tara,
Wake up, America. I've spent a lifetime arguing that sunlight is the best disinfectant, but lately the sunlight looks more like a magnifying glass. My friend Kenny Webster tweeted something that stopped me in my tracks. He said the general public isn't emotionally mature enough to handle the Epstein files and that stupid people are running wild with cherry-picked facts. Now, normally as a libertarian, a statement like that would make my skin crawl. But look at the disorder. It brings us to the forbidden philosophy of Plato and Leo Strauss. The noble lie. Plato argued in the Republic that a stable society requires a myth. The myth of the metals is what he made up. You have to tell people that God put gold in the leaders, silver in the guards, and bronze in the workers. Not because it's true, because it's not, but because if everyone realizes that the guardians are just as corrupt and flesh and blood as the rest of us, the entire civilization collapses into nihilism. Now, Leo Strauss took this argument further, arguing that elites must keep the ugly truths esoteric for the few, while giving the broader general public a comfortable, stabilizing, exoteric story. Now, I used to hate this elitism. It was the kind of thing that made my skin crawl, deeply cringe. I learned about Leo Strauss through criticisms of him by Ron Paul and others who criticized specifically this concept of a noble lie. I'm starting to wonder if I was wrong. I'm starting to wonder if the ancients were protecting us from ourselves. Let's look at the fruits of total transparency. We have Representatives Khanna and Thomas Massie grandstanding, yes, grandstanding, on the House floor, unmasking 6 names they claim the DOJ was hiding for no apparent reason. Well, we found the reason, and it's embarrassing. According to the latest reports from The Guardian and CBS News, 4 of those 6 names were completely random individuals from a New York FBI photo lineup. We're talking about an IT manager from Queens and a few guys with old misdemeanor arrests who have zero connection to Jeffrey Epstein. But because Khanna and Massie wanted a viral clip, these innocent men are now linked to the most infamous sex offender in history on the permanent record. This is the noble lie in reverse. It's a vulgar lie dressed up as transparency. When the public isn't mature enough to distinguish between a co-conspirator and a bystander, total disclosure doesn't lead to justice. It leads to a lynch mob. Kenny is right. Cherry-picked facts in the hands of the emotionally immature are themselves a weapon of mass destruction. Then you have the actual big names. Leslie Wexner and Sultan bin Sulayem. Khanna and Massie pointed to a 2019 FBI document calling Wexner a co-conspirator. But here's the reality. Being referenced 200 times in a file is not an indictment. So we have known that Wexner hired Epstein to manage his money since the 1990s. And bin Sulayem resigned as CEO of DP World last week over an email where Epstein said he loved the torture video. It's ugly. It's creepy. Is it a crime? Tara Palmeri uses these bits of filth as a shield to avoid defending her own shoddy reporting on this. When Michael Tracey points out that the A-list sex ring narrative is collapsing, she pivots to who pays you, right? This is the grifters' power. They feed the public a diet of outrage, but they never provide the context. Like, they're the opposite of Straussians. They want the public to be as hysterical as possible because, guess what? Hysteria is monetizable. Here's the truth that the noble lie was probably trying to hide. Donald Trump was right. The 3.5 million pages released by Pam Bondi last month actually absolved Trump. The FBI files show he was the one telling cops to focus on the evil Ghislaine Maxwell in 2006. But the media grifters can't handle that. They would rather keep the public, you, in a perpetual state of brainless hysteria than admit that the conspiracy they promised was a dud. Leo Strauss warned that if you destroy the exoteric myth without replacing it with something better, you get chaos. And we are in that chaos now. We have traded the stability of the noble lie for the permanent revolution of the digital grift. Wake up, America. The truth might set you free, but if you don't have the emotional maturity to handle it, it will just burn down the very civilization you're trying to save. Rise and freedom. So is the Epstein sex ring narrative finally collapsing under the weight of actual evidence? When we come back, we're dividing fact from fiction with one of the Free State Project's icons in New Hampshire, Jeremy Kauffman, two most hated libertarians in the United States. Me and Jeremy getting together, we're going to break down that Palmeri dust up and why our favorite congressman even might be whipping up a dangerous moral panic. Don't go anywhere. The truth will set you free.
New York City's own past policies are to blame for much of the gig economy drama, which Mayor Mamdani will further exacerbate. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani is barely a month into the job, and he's already aggressively seeking to follow through on his campaign pledge to crack down on the gig economy. In recent weeks, his administration has launched several high-profile initiatives against gig companies, seeking to portray them as greedy corporations out to fleece earnest workers. But behind the flashy press releases and dramatic saber rattling, the reality is that New York City's own past policies are to blame for much of the gig economy drama in the Big Apple. And worse yet, it's everyday New Yorkers who will likely suffer most from this regulatory onslaught. From day one on the job, the Mamdani administration has made its anti-gig bent clear. On Inauguration Day, Mamdani's pick to head the city's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, DCWP, Samuel Levine, was already signaling to the press the coming gig economy crackdown. Even prior to Mamdani's official inauguration, Levine's appointment to head DCWP was accompanied by language accusing gig companies of misclassifying workers as independent contractors instead of full-scale employees. Before serving in the Mamdani administration, Levine worked at the Federal Trade Commission during the Biden administration, where he was known as a key acolyte to Lena Khan during her notorious anti-business reign at the agency. Now, Levine is running point for Mamdani's anti-gig agenda across New York City. 2 weeks into Mamdani's tenure, the mayor, joined by Levine and Deputy Mayor for Economic Justice Julie Su, another former Biden official who served as the acting Secretary of Labor during the 46th president's term, issued a statement declaring a new era of accountability for gig companies. The declaration coincided with a DCWP report alleging that gig companies like Uber and DoorDash had engineered design tricks in their in-app platforms to reduce worker tips by $550 million. These design tricks included moving in-app tipping prompts for food delivery, presenting the option for tipping after an order was complete rather than before. This in-app tip reshuffling came in reaction to NYC's prior 2023 decision to impose a minimum wage for food delivery drivers in the city, which sent food delivery costs soaring. The companies appear to have changed the timing of the tip option as a way to reduce the sticker shock for consumers when placing orders. The New York City Council responded last year by passing a law mandating that gig companies place their tipping prompts before an order was placed, rather than after. Last month, after news arrived that several lawsuits by gig companies seeking to enjoin these and other gig-related rules were rejected by federal judges, Levine's DCWP issued a statement reiterating its plan to vigorously enforce the city's minimum wage and tipping rules for gig workers. The city also launched its own lawsuit against the gig company MotoClick, which it argues blatantly ignored the minimum wage law and stole directly from workers' paychecks. While it's impossible to evaluate the claims against MotoClick at this early juncture in the legal proceedings, Mamdani's team also recently announced a $5 million settlement with gig platforms Uber Eats, Fantuan, and Hungry Panda for violating the minimum wage law. The Uber Eats settlement received the most attention since it involved the highest amount of settlement money. But while the top-line numbers received all the press, little attention has been paid to the fine print. Even the city noted that Uber Eats was mostly compliant with the minimum wage law and incurred the wage debt only in weeks where workers had a delivery canceled, and therefore the workers involved failed to receive the appropriate compensation from Uber. Uber clarified that DCWP had originally flagged this pay shortfall to the company in August 2024, 1.5 years before Mamdani took office, and Uber immediately agreed at the time to take corrective action to fix the issue and pledged to pay more than the amount owed in response. This nuance didn't stop Levine from triumphantly declaring, "The era of giant corporations juicing profits by underpaying workers is over." Also being lost in all the media fanfare over Mamdani's gig war is the likely cost to everyday New Yorkers. Evidence has repeatedly shown that anti-gig regulations always end up resulting in higher costs for consumers. Just recently, Instacart instituted a $5.99 regulatory response fee due to a recent extension of NYC's minimum wage law to grocery deliverers. It's also unclear how much the regulatory onslaught even helps gig workers. Tips plummeted by nearly 50% in the wake of the minimum wage law's passage in NYC, and delivery drivers in Seattle, which implemented its own minimum wage for gig-based delivery, failed to see any...
You just can't engage on the merits, Tara. You are a disgrace.
I mean,
you
I'm
are
happy
going
to go
be
through all of my
remembered as
reporting,
somebody
which
who
was
is integral
fact-checked.
in fomenting this moral panic and mass hysteria that's led to mass defamation like you just tried against me. You know how Khanna and Thomas Massie got caught a few days ago accusing a random auto mechanic in New York and a random IT manager of having been complicit in pedophilic sex crimes? You're just following on in that tradition, which is so emblematic of how this issue has...
Wake up, America. For years, the Jeffrey Epstein saga has been the ultimate Rorschach test for American politics. If you hate the elite, it's a global pedophile ring. If you hate the media, it's a massive cover-up. But as 3.5 million files finally hit the public record, the narrative is hitting a brick wall called reality. So last week, we saw reporter Tara Palmeri pivot to character assassination when Michael Tracey dared to question the strength of her sources. And on Capitol Hill, we have representatives Khanna and Thomas Massie unmasking names on the House floor that turned out to be completely random people from an FBI photo lineup. It turns out that transparency without accuracy is just a high-tech lynch mob. Joining me now to dissect the grift, the documents, and the danger of libertarian populism gone off the rails, man who's never afraid to take a swing at a sacred cow, Jeremy Kauffman from the Free State Project. Good morning, Jeremy. Jeremy.
Hey, it's great to be here. You know, what a fun subject for us to be discussing.
You know, it's funny. I'm 100% sure we're going to get accused of being paid by, I don't know, Israel and every other, conspiracy, the Illuminati, the Rothschilds for this conversation today. But, I don't know about you, Jeremy, but I only make money like Michael Tracey does. Like, he's got his Substack supporters. I've got Peterson's Patriots, so I can say things like this. I'm not paid by politicians to be a mouthpiece. I mean, when you watch a reporter like Tara Palmeri respond to a factual challenge with "who pays you," what does that tell you about the state of the Epstein industrial complex?
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm like a centrist on this issue or where I am exactly. It's not. Epstein did nothing wrong or anything like that. This guy appears to be a scumbag, a sleazy guy who committed crimes and deserved to be punished for at least some of the things that he did. But then there's this set of beliefs out there that does feel delusional to me. It does appear to be hurting innocent people. And something that I definitely pattern match onto strongly is when I see someone like that reporter's name, was her name Tara? You're being clearly dishonest. She posted a video on X that's like, why couldn't Michael Tracey answer the question? And she cut it off when he answers the question 30 seconds later. And it's like, if I see someone exhibit that kind of behavior, my trust in everything they're saying goes out the window, because you don't need to do that kind of thing, when the truth is on your side. And so I've been seeing a lot of this. People will say, and I'll look at this and it'll be an image that wasn't in the files, or it will be something that was clearly disproven. And so I'm not going to say that nothing happened, but there clearly are people out there who believe things well in excess of what there appears to be sound evidence for.
Now, Michael Tracey argued that the crux of the Epstein mythology is built on what he calls brainless hysteria. So how much of this A-list sex ring narrative do you think is actually supported by the millions of pages we've seen so far?
Look, I think it's fairly likely that people were going to Epstein's Island to have sexual encounters with adult women, some of whom were probably paid to be there or compensated in one way or another. I don't think that's not behavior we should necessarily morally approve of, but that's a far different crime from, there's a pedophile ring, or they're eating babies, or some of these more, in my opinion, sort of ludicrous things. And I think I also think it's not true that everyone who went to the island was doing these things. So I think this idea that, simply because someone visited the island, or simply because someone knew or was in contact with Epstein, that they were there for criminal, or I think this kind of stuff is crazy. And I am someone who is willing to stand up to these kinds of moral hysterias. I did it during BLM. I did it during Me Too. And I'm happy to do it again here, because I think there are innocent people, or comparatively innocent people, who are now being hurt by these allegations. And, and some of them are successful and generally good men.
Let's talk about that, because, there was the photo lineup disaster. Khanna and Massie named 6 men that they claimed that the DOJ was hiding. It turns out it was just 4 random New Yorkers in an FBI folder. So how does a mistake like that happen if you're actually interested in the truth, Jeremy? I love babies, but I usually can't finish a whole one, says Justin in the chat. Jeremy's having a little technical difficulty. Jeremy, did you hear my question?
I did. I get the question. I apologize. I'm having some technical difficulties. I promise I'll get them worked out in the future. But something I think it's similar to is the demand for these types of crimes. Sort of outstrips the supply. It's not that it never happens. Pedophilia is a real crime. It deserves to be, harshly punished when it happens. But sort of the desire for these elites or various people who are disliked, people just really want to believe that they're evil pedophiles. And I think you're fine to not like them, but they're not necessarily evil pedophiles. And it's similar to I made a comparison to sort of the demand for racism. Among the progressive class, the demand for racism outstrips the supply. So they see racism even when it's not there. And I think there's a similar thing here. The social conservatives rightly, want to be on guard against things that would hurt children and so on. And they want to signal, virtue signaling is not all bad. They want to signal their virtue, that they stand up for kids, they protect kids. But I think sometimes this desire is leading to people seeing things that aren't real or don't appear to be real.
Jeremy, I have friends and listeners who are furious at us that we are even deigning to question Massie on this. They say he's fighting the deep state. Why are you nitpicking? So how do we explain to the liberty movement that fighting the deep state doesn't give you a license to smear private citizens?
I think this is the best argument for it. I mean, I'm kind of torn on this one. Because to what degree do you have to sometimes hold your nose and let a not truthful narrative run wild because it's in your benefit? But I can't help myself. I'm very attached to the truth. The truth is what I like, more than anything else, and I can't help opening my mouth when I see people spreading what appears to be a mistruth. And so I'm not, again. There's a lot of information in those files. So I don't want to be here and say, oh, there's nothing in them. Like, I haven't gone through all of them. I look at stuff that people show me on X and I look into it, and a lot of it doesn't seem to hold up. But people should continue to go through them. Look, if there are, and the idea that there are other people who committed crimes that was covered up or they weren't found out, I don't think we should be here like ruling that out and saying, you know, that didn't happen. I think it is clear that there's excessive claims. I think it is clear that some innocent people have been, maligned who didn't do something. But the answer should just be we should have strong evidence. And it's funny. I've I've gotten probably more minarchist and less anarchist as I've gotten older, because I've seen this play out, and this is what anarchist justice looks like. This is justice by the mob rule, which is it's Girardian scapegoating. People get riled up and then they want to scapegoat someone and they want to chop their head off. And this is why we developed courts. This is why we have court systems, so that we can go through these things soberly and evidence can be presented and the people get to defend themselves. And this is what should happen. To the extent that there are people who have behaved criminally in these files, or there might be we should be doing this through the court system. The evidence should be marshaled, defenses should be marshaled, and we should find out the truth the best that we can find it out. But this sort of social media mobbing is I think not generally truth-seeking behavior.
We've seen Nancy Mace hopping on board. We've seen Marjorie Taylor Greene hopping on board. We've seen so many of these people who are representatives jumping on board. And one of the primary claims is that these rich and powerful men, these powerful people, feel like they can get away with doing whatever they want. Well, are Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna rich and powerful men who can go use their power and privilege to go on the floor, use the speech and debate clause, smear anyone that they like, and not have to face any repercussions that a private citizen? Are they not rich and powerful men using their own power to smear private citizens?
Yeah, well, I will say I don't, at least in Massie's case, I will say I doubt that Massie was trying to hurt an innocent person. He probably, whoever he named, he probably thought he was correct there. And I would hope if he got it wrong that, he would apologize. And I'm happy to believe that was an innocent mistake. The truth is an absolute defense against, defamation. And so I do think it's this idea that there's some sort of process that needs to happen to name the names. Either the female accusers or Ro Khanna or Thomas Massie, like they can name the names. The truth should be a defense here. And so if there are people, and again, I will say, I don't think we should rule this out. There was stuff going on here that was shady. We don't know all the details. And so if they want to name names, they've got to get it, correct. They appear to have gotten, what they wanted in terms of these files being released. Although I do understand there's some redactions that are still being debated. And, something else that I have seen, and something that I wish there was more focus on. I mean, like to me, one of the shadier things I've seen here is the idea that, there were financial crimes happening here, that there's, influence peddling, that, our government is for sale, or influence in our government is for sale. I find this stuff to be, and it would be nice if there was more of a focus on this side of it, and not just everyone who visited the island, is a pedophile who is eating babies.
I agree with you, Jeremy. And I think this is a story that deserves nuance. Nobody who reports on this one doesn't have to be questioned. So the thing that really pissed me off about this interview with Tara Palmeri and Michael Tracey is that she just accuses him of being paid to advance these ideas. Jeremy, as someone who has been working in 20 years in the media and specifically the libertarian space, it's a very small world. But I can tell you unequivocally that if you are not a conspiracy retard, it's a lot harder to make money. Okay. I figured this out early in my career because 2 or 3 of the articles I think I wrote back in the day were kind of like conspiracy-ish, or what I realized was whenever there was any kind of a hint of sort of a conspiracy angle to any story that I covered, they way outperformed any of the kind of like honest, critical journalism that I was doing to try and inform people, inform the public. And it's enough to make you want to throw your hands up and just say, fuck it. Just do everybody's a pedophile, a reptilian, conspiracy theorist. Jeremy, you and I, we are plagued by these people. I would say that a strong majority of the libertarian movement are people who engage in conspiratorial thinking, very low time preference behavior, very nihilistic, very misanthropic, Jeremy. And I think 90% of our wounds are from this self-inflicted lack of critical thinking. And it makes me wonder if Ron Paul wasn't wrong about Leo Strauss and the noble lie. All of this, it makes me wonder, maybe the redactions are there to protect innocent people, Jeremy, because look at this. If you see a lynch mob, do you tell them which way the guy is headed? Or do you tell them they're going, if you see a bunch of retards with, Ku Klux Klan vibes and a black man's running one way and you don't know the story, do you tell them where to find him, Jeremy? I mean, considering your tweet history, I don't know. But don't answer that. But I mean, the noble lie, Jeremy, knowing what you know about libertarians, do they deserve the truth?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is a tough one. I want to believe that you can win via the truth. I try very hard to be that way. But it's a real problem. People are eager to believe things that, if true, would be good for them. And so a lot of this is, people are primed to want to believe that these people are real bad guys, or that, of course, my political enemies aren't just my political enemies. They're also, rapists and murderers and all these other things. And so it's definitely an uphill battle, because it certainly would be convenient, if all of this stuff was true. And so I apologize for not, coming, not having some like tight answer here, but I think this is a real challenge.
Not an easy question. It's a real challenge. I am beginning to question everything I ever believed, because here's the thing. I think it's a short leap of logic to suggest that democracy is a bad thing and that it's mob rule when we're talking about it in the context of voting. But then now is it really that unrealistic to assume that the truth is also something that it has to be withheld from the masses, that an esoteric truth is for the elites and the people who watch the Wake Up America show? Obviously, if you're smart enough to find a platform like Rumble, get this thing turned on, use Bluetooth, tune in, know what the hell's going on, and comment on these things. The people who watch this show are going to be the elites. They deserve an esoteric truth. But do the conspiracy tards, do they need an exoteric truth, Jeremy? Do they need to believe in the lie of the gods, that there's silver in the guards, that there's gold in the patriarchs, and that the common man has bronze in him? Do they need an exoteric truth?
That's a good question. I want to believe that they don't, but that's just like what I want to believe. I obviously don't have these, impulses. I've never, from a young age, I've never been the kind of person who's been into this stuff. And so I don't have the best intuitions for what it's like to be, to be finding this stuff so seductive, because a lot of people just find it so, seductive.
They're obsessed.
And our job is to get stuff done in the real world. And so I do think, we've got to find the sort of synthesis here, because those two things are in tension.
Thomas Massie, he's one of the best we've got in DC, right? But is he falling into the populist trap here? Is the pressure to deliver a smoking gun to the base causing him to overlook basic due diligence?
Yeah, look, I would hope that Massie has a strategy here, and that he's trying to set himself up as a candidate, maybe for president in 2 years, and he's trying to be, set up a different lane and a different camp. I do think, one of the dangers of social media definitely can be, audience capture. It changes you to have a certain audience, and he's getting a ton of praise from certain groups of people. And I think it's difficult to have that not influence you to some degree, even if you are a more independently minded like he is. I'm sure it happens to you and me as well, even if we try to remain, independent minded.
No, it's true. You're absolutely right.
So I would hope that there's a strategy there. I think one other comment I'll make here is, because I've seen this, if you build a movement on top of people who have disordered thinking, who leap to these conclusions and so on, their way of thinking isn't going to change, and they're going to be that way in the future, because that's their psychology. And so I do think that is like one of the dangers of building a populist movement off of people who are inclined to conspiratorial and what I would call like borderline schizophrenic thinking, although I'm not saying everyone who believes this stuff is a schizophrenic. I'm not saying that. But that's a way of thinking that will, they're going to think that way about you next. They're going to think that way about the next problem.
Yeah. I see it all the time. I've seen it for years. And, I really have been reconsidering my priors on things because, I've known for years that democracy, unchecked democracy, is just the mob at the ballot box. And now I have to wonder if that concept just doesn't apply to other areas of our culture and our society, which, if anything, makes me very not populist, right? If populism is anti-elitism, then accepting this makes me the most elitist of all. This new push for populism, there is a sort of irony in so many of them who do criticize democracy, because what could be more elitist than the attitude that not everyone really should vote and that we should prevent people from voting if they say can't pass a first grade reading test? Jeremy, are we elites?
I am definitely not a populist. So I don't know I suppose if the opposite of populism is elitism, then that does make me something of an elitist. I don't know that I would consider myself, an elite specifically. That's a challenging hat to put on. But I definitely, when I see this stuff, I want the opposite of whatever this is. I don't trust these sort of mob type judgments.
Yeah, I don't either, Jeremy. And thanks for being brave, man. I see you post on X, and it when you see somebody else being brave, it can inspire others to be brave. It inspires me to be brave.
Thank you. Same.
I'm not going to say that, I'm going to just start saying the N-word all the time, but every once in a while I do say nigger. In the context, and it's important context, right? And that's a conversation that we're going to have for another time. Now I've got my viral clip, and I've now been denigrated with the Groypers, but that'll put me in good company, because I'm pretty sure that all of Thomas Mass's audience these days are now Groypers. So.
Well, cheers. We'll have to pick up that conversation another time. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Jeremy. We'll talk again very soon. Have a wonderful day, and appreciate your courage. Thank you very much for tuning in the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. If you haven't already, please click that like button. We are a brave and dangerous show. Cecilia says, catch you later. Enjoy some birthday cake. Yeah, I'm going to give you some birthday cake because it's time for a little great grift off. Who's ready to play Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Everybody who's watching us live right now, is eligible to play the game, eligible to win. So what I need you to do is to go to crowdparty.app. That's the website. We're all going to play a mini game together against each other. And it's fun because the first place winner of the game is going to win a real prize. Yes, you. Are you watching this show live, or are you listening to it later? You're listening to it live. So go to crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. Go to crowdparty.app. And when you do, log in using the code on your screen, 86674. 86674. I will wait for about a minute, and we will have a great grift off. Speaking of grifting, Liberty Loot Live is our game show mode on the Wake Up America show. We play a trivia game. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? We're all competing against each other, and the first place winner wins a nice prize from the grift shop. It's my birthday. I'm giving you guys a gift, so join the game. In just a moment, I'm going to click the Squid Game button, which will mean you have 30 seconds to get in the game, and then we're all going to play and compete against each other for real prizes at the shop. Go to crowdparty.app. Luke, your phone is across the room. Get up, grab your phone. I will wait for you. Go to crowdparty.app on your phone, CROWDPARTY. Enter in the code 86674. That's 86674. I'm about to hit the 30-second countdown button. Once you start to hear that music, you'll have 30 seconds to get in the game. Are we ready? Are we ready? Here we go. 30 seconds. That's 30 seconds until the game begins. Crowdparty.app. is the website. 86674. That's 86674. 15 seconds until we begin the game. That's 86674 at crowdparty.app to join the game. We've got 8 players so far. And we'll begin in 3, 2, 1, go. Here we go. How many nouns are in the sentence, the cat walked into the room and sat on the couch? 3, 2, 4, or 1? Are you smarter than a 5th grader? See, if you can't pass this, if you can't win this game, if you can't do at least moderately well past this test, then do you really deserve to know the truth about the pedophilic sex crimes? The first day of the 20th century was January 1, 1900, January 1, 2001, January 1, 2000, January 1, 1901. The first day of the 20th century was January 1st, 1901. Leaderboard. Pork chop number 1. What shape is a stop sign? Is it a decagon, an octagon, a pentagon, or a hexagon? It's an octagon. 8 size. Bernie Sanders at number 1. Quest at number 2. Don't worry, still plenty of time to come back. We're on round 4 out of 12. Matching pairs. You could blow it away right now just by winning the matching pairs. Match those pairs. Justin and I used to play this game when we were kids. We had cards. We would play matching pairs. Everybody, thank you so much for all of your generous contributions. Your donations are truly appreciated. It's people like you that keep the For Liberty Network growing strong. Where were the first fireworks invented? USA, South Africa, China, Brazil. China. Everybody knows that, except for one person who's not smarter than a 5th grader. What is the French phrase we have used to describe a scene we feel we have experienced previously? Deja vu, rendezvous, cliché, or facade? Everybody got the ocean except for one. Bernie Sanders number 1, Quest number 2, Siggy number 3, Justin number 4. We still got time to win because it's round 8 of 12. White and fluffy clouds that signify fair weather are called stratus, cumulonimbus, cirrocumulus, cumulus. Dun, 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 dun. Din, 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 di, 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 di. Ding, ding. The most consumed beverage in the world after water. Orange juice, coffee, Coke, or tea. That should be easy. It's tea. Ooh, Quest pulled up at number 1. All right, find the diamonds, avoid the bombs. It's a little game of Minesweeper. Mines. How many did you get? F them mines. All right. There's only 3. Justin, wow. Number 2. He blew up. You still got a chance to win, Justin. How many letters are in the English alphabet? 27, 28, 24, or 26? It's close now, and you still got these 2 rounds. It's Justin versus Quest. 26. 8 out of 8 got it, but who got it the fastest? Quest did. Siggy's mom popped up in there at number 2. Justin still a chance to win in the last round. Here we go, guys. First, second, and third are very close. What ancient civilization built the Machu Picchu complex in Peru? What ancient civilization built the Machu Picchu complex in Brazil? Was it? Well, hi guys, Steffi's here. How we doing?
Happy birthday!
Thank you, cutie. This is the end. Game over. Let's see who the winner was. Great grift off winner, Quest Fanning. Quests.
What about Ashley Ann?
Ashley Ann, I don't know if she was there. Maybe she was somebody else, but she wasn't there. So, Quest, you are the winner. Send us a text. We'll send you your $25 gift card to the Grift Shop. I know you're going to love it. Guys, thank you so much for everything you've done. I know it's going to be a great day. We will definitely still be here, Stephanie and I, for tomorrow, Freedom Family Friday. So don't worry about that. And
the party continues.
The party continues. Yeah. Yes. And then tonight, of course, Daniela, don't forget to watch her, rumble.com/Culturama. You guys are going to exit through the Grift Shop. We now have K-Cups. So thank you, Brad, for making our K-Cups.
They're so pretty.
Yes, you can get these at 4libertyshop.com. That's the number 4, libertyshop.com. You guys wanted K-Cups? You got K-Cups, and each one has a different founding father story attached to them. So check those out at 4libertyshop.com. Support the revolution. Thank you, Noma Johnny. Thank you, Quest Fanning. Thank you, Drew Van Runkle. Decision Points. We love you guys. We appreciate you. We're going to do a raid now. I'm going to take all my viewers, and we're going to give them to Mark Cox in St. Louis. He's a friend.
Aww.
Tell him I said hello, and I thank you. My mother thanks you. My wife thanks you. My baby thanks you. My brother thanks you. And I thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
New York City's own past policies are to blame for much of the gig economy drama, which Mayor Mamdani back in 1773. In a city where businesses never sleep, the technology still crashes. When technology turns criminal, they send up the signal. He's not a myth, and he's definitely not your nephew who knows computers. He installs, he protects, he backs it up, he keeps your business online and out of trouble. Managed IT, security, cloud, support that actually answers the phone. Layer 8 tech. When your network breaks, he wakes. Call Drew before your tech needs a rescue signal.